Good morning. Happy Monday, Thomas Fitzgerald. I hope you had an awesome weekend. We are ready for a full week of school here, but before we start our full week, I'm going to give you the first in math update. So many awesome things to celebrate, and I want to give you this count. So many classes that are very close. The other thing I'm so impressed with is how many classes jumped. You made milestones last week. So let me give you the number. Our first week that we were doing the sticker count, March 6th to the 13th, we were at around 147,000 stickers. Last week, the 13th through the 19th, we were at, wait for it, 283,839 stickers. That is a tremendous, humongous jump from the week before. So very proud of you. The other thing another little fact, and another little challenge I'm going to give you is, I love the other Upper Dublin elementary schools, but we need to be ahead of them. We need to be beating Fort Washington, beating Jarrowtown, beating Maple Glen. So right now, top 10 teams in Pennsylvania, we are at number 8 with 13,139. Jarrowtown is at 13,292, not that far ahead of us, okay? And then Fort Washington is at 13,371. Guys, we're right there. We can beat them. So next week, I want to see us at the top of the Upper Dublin school count, okay? Now, here's some other points I want to make to you, because from week 1 to week 2, I want to tell you, give a huge shout out to a couple of classes that just killed it over the last week. First, I'll start with kindergarten here. Mrs. Lebowski's class. Last week alone, I keep want to say this week, but last week, they earned 3,488. That was a tremendous jump from 1,365. Mrs. Nittmeyer's class, they went from 1,196 to 4,459. I mean, that is unbelievable. Mrs. Vogel's class, they started at 631. They jumped to 2,983. Look at the leaps and bounds that we're doing. Mrs. Lindmar's class, 797. They jumped to 2,079. Mrs. Griffin's class earned 7,259 this last week. Mrs. Lynch's class, really, high five, Mrs. Lynch, 10,395 a week ago. That's last week. And Mrs. Crawford's class, I had to text Mrs. Crawford last night. I was so impressed in the jump. You guys were at 2,375 2 weeks ago. And last week, you were at 11,197. I think that might be the record. Mrs. Crawford's class, I should hear you screaming right now. Yes. Mrs. O'Neill's class went from 1,746 to 4,200. Mrs. Gallen's class, you're leading that 4th grade bunch right now at 5,048. And then another huge shout out. Mrs. Lawrence's class, you guys were at 3,524 2 weeks ago. Last week, you were at, wait for this jump, 12,545. You guys just rocked it last week. And then Mr. Dugan's class, he had a really great count, 10,411. So let me tell you who the leaders are in first in math as of the end of last week. Now, we still have another week to go, and I know that you are going to even exceed last week's limits. So it's anybody's game. It's anybody's game. Let me just say that again. It's anybody's game. Who's going to win the ice cream sundae party? So let me tell you who is in the lead right now. So in kindergarten, we have KB with 16 total points. You are in the lead. For first grade, we have Mrs. Nittmeyer is in the lead with 11 total points. In second grade, we have Mrs. Griffin's class at 14 points. And in third grade, we have Mrs. Lynch's class is in lead with 17 points. But Mrs. Lynch's class, you cannot get lazy because Mrs. Crawford's class is right on your tail with 15. Mrs. Gallen's class is winning in 4th grade. Way to go, Mrs. Gallen's class. And in 5th grade, right now in the lead is Mr. Dugan's class with 17 total points. However, Mr. Dugan's class, Mrs. Lawrence's class is right on your tail. They have 16 points. So again, anybody's game. Now, last week, I have to tell you, second place wasn't this close. So even if you're in third and even if you're in fourth, you could still take the ice cream party prize. All right, so first the math, way to go. Check out the bulletin board. It'll be updated today. Also, just want to remind you, you need to have 2 ID cards, right, for breakfast and for lunch. Have one in your backpack and then one that's in your room so that you have for breakfast and lunch. If you use your ID to purchase breakfast and lunch, you will get a raffle ticket. And that raffle ticket winner will win prizes. There's lots of prizes. We're collecting lots of things that you might love. Make sure you're using your ID badge. Have a great Monday. See you later, everybody.